We've got two new bikes for you guys today to get out and test. That would be the RFN SX-E8 and the RFN SX-E15. Those numbers stand for kilowatt output, being 8 kilowatts and 15 kilowatts. And I'm excited to get into the specs and talk you guys through this new lineup from RFN. Let's start out by talking about the smaller of the two bikes. This is the RFN SX-E8. Like I mentioned already, it is an 8 kilowatt bike. It is a 60 volt, 35 amp hour battery in this machine. And if you guys recall, when Sur-Ron Lightbees first came out, they were around that 60 volt, 35 amp hour battery size. This bike weighs roughly the same as a Sur-Ron Lightbee, maybe a little bit heavier at 135 pounds, but not by much, because this bike has got some awesome specs to back that weight, including really powerful brakes. In fact, these are the same brakes, the LBN style brakes that are found on the Teleria MX-5. I'm super stoked that they went with this brake option because out of most of the brakes that I have seen, these ones have always had the best feel to me, all the way from the levers to the modularity to the actual stopping power. I think those will do awesome on a bike of this size. Now, obviously, I might not be the best test rider for a bike of this size. This is meant for kids. It is not like the Electro & Co. ETM RTR that is a pit bike designed for adults. However, this bike does have enough power for an adult to get on it, go play, and have a ton of fun, although the suspension might just be a little bit soft. Now, if you were to take this suspension and beef it up, which we may have to look into in the future, an adult could have a ton of fun on a bike like this. But ultimately, if you guys are comparing apples to apples in the gas bike world, this is a great bike that sits around the 65cc size. Now, a couple of things about this bike that I like looking at it right off the bat are the shape and design of it in general. I think they did a great job with the plastics kit on this bike. I think it's going to be really easy to squeeze. The seat feels really good. It's comfy. The overall body shape I think is pretty awesome on this machine. It has a swappable battery as well, which is super important. But the best thing about this bike being a swappable battery is that it's actually bolted to the frame. So what you do is you access these two bolts here on the side and you pull the battery out sideways. Now, this handle on the battery is protruding quite a bit, but if that is something that is bothersome, you can just remove the handle with 4 bolts and put it back on when you want to take the battery out of the bike. So that is nice that that is an optional thing to have that handle on at all times. I'm gonna see how it feels riding it today with it on the bike, but once again, this is a small pit bike sized play bike, fun for adults. Not really designed for adults, but it should be a good time to try because I think this thing's built beefy enough to handle an adult. Something else about this bike that I'm extremely stoked about is that it comes with a 420 drivetrain on it, and it's a direct drive. It is not a jack shaft driven bike like a lot of bikes out there in the market today, really leaning towards its gas bike roots. Visually looking at it, I think it's a great looking bike. You can definitely tell that RFN was adopted by Beta Motorcycles. Judging by the color scheme and by the design quality of this, I think it's a huge step in the right direction for the brand RFN. And it even comes with name brand tires, being the Kenda Carlsbad tires on this bike. And there are all sorts of tire options for this machine because it is a 12-inch rear and a 14-inch front, which is very typical in the gas bike world. So a lot of brands have manufactured tires that will fit this bike perfectly. I think overall, the build of this machine is really impressing me so far. I think it's going to be extremely exciting to get some kids on it and see how they do. In fact, I've actually already seen a kid competing on this bike at the Glen Helen Electric Motocross World Championship, and I was blown away. He was hauling on this bike against adults in the pit bike class. Being an 8 kilowatt bike, it's plenty fast, and it's got a top speed of 53 miles per hour, which is massive. But Another nice thing about an electric dirt bike is all of this can be controlled through an app. So if you don't want your kid going that fast, you can turn this bike down. You've got all the adjustability in the world to do so. And RFN has really made this bike work well for kids racing head to head against other kids. And I'm actually really excited to throw my leg over a small bike like this. The last time I was kind of excited about a pit bike style bike was the Electro & Co ETM RTR. That is still an awesome pit bike for adults. I think it's a killer bike overall, but this one's much more oriented towards kids and I think will suit them extremely well. And moving on to the RFN SX-E15, this bike fits really well into the mid-sized bike category. In fact, it looks extremely similar to a Super Mini, especially with these 1619 wheels on it. If you're unfamiliar with what a Super Mini is, it's basically an 85cc dirt bike, just hopped up a little bit. So you'll see them around 112 cc's instead of 85, but it's the same size bike as one of those. That is essentially what I would compare the 1619 version of this bike head to head with. Now RFN compares this bike to a 125cc. I don't quite see that being the case, even though this bike does come with 1821 wheels, which would make it overall larger. A 125 really isn't much smaller than a 250cc dirt bike, but this bike's got quite a bit of power underneath it at what RFN claims to be a true 15 kilowatts. I think overall this bike looks really good. It's a huge improvement off of what they have previously come out with. I do wish that today I was testing the 1821 version of this bike. I think it would suit me a lot better than the 1619 does. Either way, it's just a difference in wheel sizes, nothing I'm not used to. And I do need to mention that the bike in front of me right here is a prototype bike. This is not the production version, although extremely close and at a point where we can test this bike and be confident about it. This is still a prototype, but bikes are on the water as we speak, so this bike will be in America in its production form extremely soon. Because it's a prototype, there's still a few specs that I don't fully know about it, like its top speed and its production weight, but they claim the production weight is 196 pounds, which isn't really outside of the norm. If you get a Sur-Ron Ultra B and put 1821 wheels on it, you're pretty much right there at the same weight as this bike, with a very similar amount of power. There are a couple of things that I can tell you right off the bat I do wish were different spec-wise, like the battery size. Although this is a hot swappable battery, it is a 74 volt 40 amp hour battery, which for a bike of this size and power output feels a little bit small, but I'm excited to try it nonetheless. This bike does look pretty good. I think it'll be interesting to see how it ultimately feels, because specs can only tell you so much. Actually riding tells you the whole story. So I'm excited to actually throw my leg over this bike. Now, last thing I want to talk about is the price of these two machines. We have got the smaller SX-E8 at $34.99 and the larger SX-E15 at $54.99 MSRP. And ultimately, looking at these bikes so far, I think those price points sit pretty decently for it. But I want to know what you guys think about the price and these bikes in general. But let's go ahead and get out there and actually test these bikes. I wish I had a little bit more time than just today for testing, but sadly I've only got these bikes for today. So we'll get out and test. I'll give you the best feedback and impressions that I can. You guys are in this with me right now, first time trying both of these bikes. And ultimately, if you guys like these machines, we might just bring them back and do some more in-depth testing for you. So let's get out there, throw on a GoPro, get you some POV of riding these bikes for the first time. All right, guys, we are starting this out on the new SX-E15. There's a sport mode and there's a track mode. I'm gonna switch it over to track. I've got a couple of levels here. I'm gonna bounce this all the way up to the highest level. Should be a full 15 kilowatt output. Right off the bat, there's some deadband in that throttle. I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but before it even starts moving, there's a bit of twist. So when I get a hold of the app, I'll be interested to see what that is like, if I can adjust that. But let's go and ride some stuff that we have never ridden before. Oh. She's pretty quick. It's actually really quick, dang. Uh-oh. We're gonna have a huge problem with that. Oh boy. Sometimes, you guys, there's big enough problems to legitimately stop riding a bike. First thing right off the bat, this is broken, so this is not gonna hold up my kickstand. And that kickstand is loose as can be. Literally loose enough for me to just pull it straight off without even grabbing tools. I wouldn't call this a fault of the bike. This is just, it doesn't have that support because it's broken from the people that put this together or who have already been riding it. So that is one thing I wouldn't fault them on quite yet. The kickstand is something that shouldn't be a problem with the right maintenance, of course. Alright, so now we can officially begin testing. This bike is quick! Dang, it is actually super quick. And that throttle feels pretty aggressive in this track mode, which is kind of what you need it to be if you're going to be doing any real track riding. Struggling a little bit because the handlebars are super low. I do not have any traction on this dirt right now. I kind of think the bottom end might be a little bit aggressive in this track mode that I'm currently riding in. So I might switch this back over to sport mode and see. That's a little bit more manageable in these slick conditions that I'm currently riding in. All in all, the suspension's not doing anything out of the ordinary for me. I've seen suspension absorb bumps and chatter a little bit better than what I'm feeling right now, but for right off the bat, and all my settings just perfectly in the center of the adjustment range, it is not unpredictable, which is a good feeling. All right, let's switch this back over to sport mode. We tried the most aggressive mode right off the bat, so let's try something a little bit, hopefully more mellow. It's only got sport and track mode, which I actually kind of like, but within each of those modes, it's got 5 different adjustments, so that's a pretty broad range of adjustability within each mode. And I'm sure within the app you can fine-tune the characteristics a lot better than what I'm feeling right now. But this thing's got a lot of power, enough power to break that rear end loose. I will say the suspension feels a little bit on the soft side, but also, like right there was pretty harsh hit going through that, but for a first ride getting used to this thing, this bike actually feels pretty ripper. I'm not gonna lie to you. Now this bike free coasts extremely well. I really like the drivetrain in it as a whole. I think the drivetrain feels super solid underneath me, which is quite refreshing to feel like when I twist the throttle, you know, I'm not gonna break anything. I'm wide open right now, and it's moving. In fact, it was hauling up that. So it's actually handling chatter really quite well as I go through a bunch of sunflowers. This is kind of a wild time to ride, and such an improvement off of the other RFN Apollos that I've ridden. This thing feels like you could just go and rip and have fun with some minor cockpit changes. Alright guys, let's talk about some of my thoughts on this bike so far. It's already been super fun getting used to this thing. There's a couple of things that I would change right off the bat, mainly just handlebars and handlebar position. That's really the big ones though. I do want to try the 1821 version of this bike, but the 1619 feels super playful. The power on this bike is pretty phenomenal. Actually, it definitely feels like a true 15 kilowatt bike. There's a lot to like about this. I love how it feels to squeeze. I love that the powertrain feels solid. The suspension's a bit on the soft side. I'm a guy that likes stiffer suspension in general. I've always been that way, but that means that this suspension can work good on both the trails and hopefully a bit of the track. I'd have to really stiffen it up to try to ride the track, but this bike's got the power for it. I do want to take this bike further. I gotta say, I do want to see this thing in its production form. I want to do some more stuff to make this bike a little bit, you know, more set up for myself and for my riding style. I want to play with the app. All in all, I want more time on it. I think this has been a super fun bike to try. It's really quite cool to see RFN step their game up, and I'm going to keep on ripping until I'm done with this battery. I'm at 50% so far, so let's keep on going. Big whoops. Man, this thing is handling so much better than I was expecting it to, especially in a straight line. The cornering could be a little bit better, which will come with time and improvement. But I would say that this bike is super predictable. It does quite well in a lot of different situations. I'm actually really enjoying my time on this thing. I gotta say, I don't think it's gonna take long to get this bike feeling the way that I want to. Good job, RFN. I'm actually having a really good time, especially when you're comparing price points. There's a lot of other bikes in the market at this price point, and this one feels really well put together. You can definitely see the roots from Beta, but also some of the chassis features like the battery shape and stuff like that coming from RFN. I was a little worried that, you know, like their last bike, the swing arm might be a little bit flexy, because that last swing arm, I mean, I could physically bend with my hands. This swing arm feels pretty good. It's pretty loose terrain out here, so I can't really tell if it's flexing too much when I get on the power, but it's working pretty dang good and got a lot of power. I'm hoping in the future RFN will give me some more time to make some adjustments that would be really cool to get this bike feeling the way that I want it to. Alright, that's that bike. Let's switch over to the small one. Alright guys, it is mini bike time. Pull this little guy off. And this is full bore pit biking for me. Ooh, that suspension is soft. Alright. Key goes on there. This thing turns on. It is ready to go. I'm going to just set that down because I don't need it. got an eco mode. It's got sport mode. Looks like we've just got eco and sport, so let's see how it goes. Obviously this thing is gonna look and feel tiny with me on it. Suspension's gonna be ultra soft because it's designed for a kid, but 8 kilowatts of power is no joke, so I guess we'll get a feel for it just to see how it goes. Why not, you know? I'm gonna do my best representation of a 65 kid that absolutely freaking shreds. So let's see how fast this thing is. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Whoa! Whoa! Man, no wonder that kid at the World Championship was shredding, dude. This thing rips. That is some serious power. Oh my gosh. How legit is that little thing? I mean, I guess I forget that 65cc dirt bikes are actually really fast. I mean, I don't know if you guys watch Supercross, but there was a kid that jumped a finish line double on a 65. And it's just crazy how good kids are getting. And this bike's got the power to match that little skill that those guys got. Because, man, I wish when I was a kid I had that kind of skill. Whoa! That is so awesome. Man, you get on that throttle and it just moves. I'm a little bit nervous to ride this thing over these whoops that I was riding on the, oh god, that I was riding on the big bike. I'm basically just a really tall little kid that shouldn't be on this bike right now. Yeah, buddy. Oh my god, it rips. It absolutely moves. Should I hit it? Should I jump it? Should I jump this little thing? No. Not even for a second. Oh! Whoa! Dude. The suspension is absorbing it. Yeah, I'm bottoming out obviously through these, but if I was a little kid, this wouldn't be a problem at all. This bike's got so much power. And these brakes are awesome. The brakes are plenty strong. This bike is plenty fast. Oh! Oh! Yes, dude! Yes, dude! I feel like if I were to stiffen the suspension up somehow, and I should definitely look into how to do that. This thing would be so fun to rip in the backyard. But for a kid, the way that it is would be so fun. I mean, I gotta say, maybe if I tone it down a little bit, power-wise, I would put my kid on this and be confident that it's not gonna break or give me any weird issues, because it just feels almost even more solid than the big bike. It feels so well put together. Yeah, how fun, dude. I'm not sure if you guys have ever raced spit bikes before. It's almost more tiring than the big bikes because you're hunched over, but this thing is so fun. Man, guys, I don't know if this is like worth me saying, but I kind of wish that for the big bike they took this little bike and just made it bigger. Like copied everything, because this thing is sick. I had a lot of fun on the bigger bike, but I would dare say I'm having more fun messing around on this thing. And when I say this bike is soft, really, the front suspension feels pretty good. I've just got so much weight over the back of this thing that I'm bottoming out the rear shock. But the front's super plush, and the valving's actually really good. Like, you can feel it working to absorb the chatter. This thing rips. This thing absolutely rips, dude. Oh my God, that's so fun. Man, no way. Oh, it's tanking these whoops. Those are huge. No freaking way, dude. I don't know if I can pop a wheelie on this thing very well. Got plenty of power. I'm just bad at wheeling little bikes. It's so funny to say that I think the little bike is better than the big bike. Like, how crazy is that of a statement to make? But seriously, I think this thing's awesome. And I think, like, you know, earlier in the beginning of the video, I said that the battery size on the big bike feels a little small. The battery size on this actually feels pretty appropriate. I've ripped it for quite a bit, and I'm at 3/4 battery. Like, that's awesome. And 8 kilowatts of power. I mean, we're talking, you know, we're talking 2025 Surround Light V power in a bike that is tiny. It's crazy. The cool thing about this is that you can control that power with an app. Like I've mentioned multiple times, you have that capability at your fingertips to set this bike up for your kid. I would even stiffen this thing up somehow. I need to look into the suspension options, but I would love to stiffen this thing up and go and rip it on a pit bike track. And I was wondering how the kid at Glen Helen at Electric Motocross World Championships did so good. Well, it's actually quite easy to say that he did super good because this bike is really good. For a bike fresh out of the box, no adjustments whatsoever, RFN really stepped their game up, man. This bike, I wouldn't do anything to. I would put my kid on it as is. He'd probably be really happy. The big bike, I would pretty much just do some different setup, make myself a bit happier, see what I can do suspension wise. I mean, man, can you imagine if I put Cirrus suspension on that bike? I think it would be a super killer bike. I think RFN did an awesome job actually pushing towards the motocross standards of things, because if you look at, you know, what these bikes are now compared to what they were, it feels like there's a little bit of racing heritage in them, and I am just super stoked about that. All in all, this was a super fun day. I wish I had these bikes for longer because I'd love to talk to you guys much more in depth about both of these bikes. I'd love to go and adjust the suspension, bone stock, get you guys some settings and some setup that will make the bikes feel even better. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching me review these bikes. I had a ton of fun riding them. It is super cool to see RFN, especially in comparison to what they used to have on the market, switch over to something with some racing heritage to back it. I'm excited to see where the future of this bike goes. Peace out, guys. Thank you for watching.